Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss more untold Hollywood stories that live far beyond red carpets and headlines. Michael Douglas is now 80 years old, and with age has come a rare honesty he once guarded carefully. For decades, the public believed his marriage to Catherine Zeta-Jones was one of Hollywood's last true fairy tales. They were beautiful, successful, admired, and seemingly unbreakable. But behind the smiles, premieres, and perfectly worded interviews lived a reality far more complicated and painful than anyone imagined. Michael no longer hides the emotional cost of loving someone while carrying age, illness, fear, and guilt on his shoulders. He has spoken quietly, not to accuse, but to release a truth he protected for years. His story forces an uncomfortable question. How much suffering can exist inside a marriage the world insists is perfect? The answer, it seems, is far more than glamour ever reveals. What looked effortless from the outside required constant emotional labor behind closed doors. And while fans celebrated milestones, Michael carried doubts that never left him. Loving Catherine was never the problem. The fear of losing her or becoming her burden was the storm he never escaped. Michael Douglas often said his life shifted in 1998, during a moment that felt small but would shape everything that followed. Recovering from back surgery and trying to leave behind old habits and addictions, he watched Catherine Zeta-Jones on screen in The Mask of Zorro. At 54, he was accomplished but restless, carrying scars from divorce, tabloid scandals, and the lifelong pressure of being Kirk Douglas's son. When he saw Catherine, 29 at the time, he didn't just see beauty. He saw youth, possibility, and a version of life he feared was slipping away. When they met later that year at the Deauville Film Festival in France, Michael leaned on charm and confidence to hide deep insecurity. He famously told her he would be the father of her children, a line meant to impress. Instead, Catherine politely shut him down. That moment humbled him deeply. She wasn't dazzled by fame or status. Yet Michael didn't retreat. When she left to film in Scotland, he sent roses to her hotel. She kept the card for decades, a quiet symbol of when she finally saw him not as a stereotype, but as a man trying to begin again. Their relationship moved quickly after that shift. By the end of 1999, they were engaged. In August 2000, their son Dylan was born, and just months later they married at New York's Plaza Hotel in a wedding that felt like a Hollywood coronation. Friends, icons, cameras, luxury, and admiration surrounded them. Catherine wore a stunning gown. Their baby was part of the ceremony, and the world applauded what looked like destiny fulfilled. But even then, Michael sensed unease. Catherine's career accelerated at lightning speed. She won an Oscar in 2003 while pregnant with their daughter, proving she was not only glamorous but powerful and unstoppable. Michael felt proud, but also quietly afraid. He was older, more tired, and increasingly aware of physical limits she didn't share. The imbalance didn't break them, but it planted seeds. During moments that should have been pure joy, Michael felt the weight of time. He loved deeply, but feared a future where he might not be able to keep up with the woman he adored. By 2010, those fears became painfully real. Michael was diagnosed with stage 4 throat cancer, news that shattered their carefully built world overnight. The tumor at the base of his tongue made eating, speaking, and even breathing painful. Chemotherapy and radiation stripped him down physically and emotionally. He later admitted his first fear wasn't dying, but leaving his children behind and forcing Catherine to carry life alone. Catherine became his anchor, never leaving his side, sleeping in hospital chairs, holding him through unbearable treatments. The world praised her devotion, but no one saw the private breakdowns. She cried alone so he wouldn't feel guilty. She stayed strong because she had no other choice. The age gap suddenly wasn't gossip, it was reality. She watched her husband weaken while trying not to collapse herself. When Michael entered remission in 2011, the public celebrated a miracle. But Catherine, finally releasing months of suppressed fear, emotionally crashed. Soon after, she entered treatment for bipolar II disorder, revealing a struggle she had hidden even from herself. Michael's recovery marked the beginning of a new crisis, not the end of one. While his body slowly healed, Catherine's mental health demanded attention she had postponed for too long. She had carried him through cancer, but the emotional cost was enormous. Michael later realized that his illness had taken something from her that might never fully return. Their roles reversed painfully fast. He was no longer fighting to survive. She was fighting to stabilize herself. Publicly, they remained composed, smiling through appearances, but privately they were exhausted. Trauma doesn't disappear when danger passes. It lingers, reshaping relationships quietly. Michael felt guilt watching Catherine suffer after giving everything to save him. He wondered if loving him had cost her too much. The marriage didn't collapse, but it bent under the weight of shared trauma neither knew how to process together. They were both healing, but not in sync, and not with the same needs. By 2012, the strain was undeniable. Catherine entered treatment centers again, focusing on managing her bipolar disorder. She was emotionally depleted after years of caregiving and self-denial. Michael, now in his late 60s, tried to rebuild confidence as a husband, but fear followed him constantly. He worried Catherine saw him less as a partner and more as someone she had to protect. The age difference, once dismissed publicly, became impossible to ignore privately. She was still driven, ambitious, craving forward momentum. He felt himself slowing, physically and emotionally. In 2013, after nearly 13 years of marriage, they separated quietly. There were no dramatic scenes, only exhaustion and honesty. Catherine left with the children to breathe, to think, to reclaim parts of herself she had lost. Michael stayed behind, alone for the first time in decades. Returning to Deauville shortly after, he appeared thinner, older, visibly affected by the full-circle moment. He spoke carefully in interviews, avoiding blame, but those close to him knew he was grieving something deeper than separation, the loss of certainty. When they appeared together again in 2014, fans celebrated what looked like reconciliation. They attended events, smiled cautiously, and moved back into the same home. But insiders sensed something fragile beneath the surface. Their reunion was built on shared history, children, and a desire to protect their family from collapse rather than true emotional repair. Michael later admitted they came back as changed people, shaped by illness, sacrifice, and unspoken resentment. The marriage survived, but it no longer flowed naturally. It required effort, patience, and compromise that often felt heavy. Over time, Michael aged rapidly. By 2020, he was visibly slower, quieter, more withdrawn. Catherine, still vibrant and energetic, stepped back into a caretaker role, but without the urgency that once justified it. She wanted to work, travel, explore life fully. Michael struggled to keep up, battling anxiety, health concerns, and fear of irrelevance. The gap between them widened again, silently. In recent years, whispers grew louder. Reports of property sales, quieter living arrangements, and emotional distance fueled speculation. Homes in Bermuda and elsewhere were sold, interpreted by many as signs of separation rather than simplification. According to those close to them, Michael privately admitted the age gap had become the defining challenge of their marriage. He saw himself through Catherine's eyes, slower and unpredictable in health. He feared he had become her responsibility instead of her equal. That realization haunted him. He loved her deeply, but understood love alone doesn't erase resentment or restore lost time. Catherine, despite devotion, struggled with frustration she couldn't ignore. She had already paused her career once. Doing it again felt unbearable. Michael carried immense guilt, believing his illness and aging had stolen pieces of her life she would never recover. At 80, Michael Douglas finally stopped protecting the illusion. He spoke not with bitterness, but with fatigue and honesty. Loving Catherine, he said privately, was both the greatest joy and the hardest battle of his life. He felt responsible for her sacrifices, her stalled dreams, and the weight she carried silently. People close to them confirmed his guilt ran deep. He believed his age and illness reshaped every chapter of their relationship. Even as they celebrated anniversaries publicly, the private reality felt fragile. Catherine, now in her mid-50s, stood at a crossroads between loyalty and self-preservation. Michael, aware of his limits, prepared himself emotionally for the possibility she might one day let go, not out of betrayal, but necessity. The truth he shared was haunting, realizing the person you love is fatting beside you and believing you are the reason. Whether their marriage survives remains uncertain. What is clear is that perfection was never the full story.